Hello, it's your good friend Joni Rotten here with more Rotten Research. Um, this is going to go in the greeny file. So you're going to hear just a warning. So warning is you're going to hear a lot of global warming. Every time you hear the word global warming, I want you to take a drink. This is in the molecular and cellular endocrinology from the 1st of April 2024, it says. I don't know if that means it's in the future. It's coming out. It's in their April volume, right? So maybe it's like a buy. I don't know, but that's what it says. So there you go. I found this while doing some research, and I just want to read it because I found some very interesting things that it says. And it says the pressures of it, along with children getting their puberty younger as we're learning, and the COVID and all of it, all of the above. Okay, A through Z, we've got it all the way covered, all the way from A to Z, ending with our Z, our Z, the ones going to be having the babies of the future. This is all the future grandmas on the planet. They're after your children because they become the grandmas. They're after your grandma. They want granny, only when she's little. So anyway, the adverse effects on adaptation. Isn't that an interesting title for an article? It's got some highlights here. It says the urban settings pose challenges for humans and animals, and they share the same environment and can serve as sentinels. Challenges in urban environments include pollution, artificial light, electromagnetic waves, noise, climate change. Take a drink, a sedentary lifestyle, a lack of nature, and endocrine effects. The endocrine system is vital for organisms' adaptation to their surroundings. This is going into, of course, evolution and Darwinism. So the endocrine system is vital for organisms' adaptation to their surroundings and has remained constant throughout evolution. Considering urban stressors' impact on the endocrine system can lead to new approaches for protecting living organisms. We're now on the endangered species list. Comprehensive studies should integrate multiple levels of information and adapt a translational, holistic, One Health perspective. So here's the abstract, and this paper comes to us from the, what is this, the Science Direct, where we got, Newton picking an apple or Moses or something, I don't know, their little image there. The introduction. Nope. The abstract. With an increasing collective awareness of the rapid environmental changes, questions and theories regarding the adaptability of organisms are emerging. Really? Global warming, take a drink, has as well as chemical and non-chemical pollution have been identified as triggers of these adaptive changes, but we can link different kinds of stressors to certain phenotypic traits. The physiological adaptation, and particularly the endocrine system adaptation of living beings to urban environments, is a fascinating way to study urban endocrinology, which has emerged as a research field in 2007. What was going on then and before, right? In this paper, we stress how endocrine disruption in humans and environment can be studied in the urban environment by measuring the levels of pollution, endocrine activities, or adversity. We broaden the focus to include not only exposure to the chemicals that have invaded our private spheres and their effects on wild and domestic species, but also non-chemical effectors such as light, noise, and climate change, CC. We argue that taking into account the various urban stress factors and their effects on the endocrine system would enable the adoption of new approaches to protect living organisms. Introduction. Since the 1970s, endocrine disrupting chemicals have been the subject of numerous studies which investigated the mode of actions or adversity, followed recently by active regulations to limit their uses and therefore their impact on both biodiversity and human health. That comes to us from Gore in 2016. However, scientific data are still insufficient to allow the implementation of regulations that would effectively protect populations. Electromagnetic waves, artificial light, noise, and a sedentary lifestyle, and global warming, drink, are all factors that interact with the endocrine system and could call upon adaptation mechanisms also activated by exposure to endocrine disrupting chemicals. We should have had I should have said, you chug when you see Gore's name. Okay. The endocrine effects of these disruptors have an impact on human and animal health and may even lead to the extinction of certain species, like the humans. The endocrine system is inherently a plastic and adaptable system aimed at promoting and maintaining reproductive and survival functions. So this is, this is the physical system. This is in living beings. So part of evolution, it completely, this affects evolution. So part of evolution, it's connected to your endocrine. So if you study such things, that's what they say. It is a reactive and regulated by numerous signaling pathways and epigenetic phenomenon that constantly interact with the organism's needs and the environment's conditions. However, these systems can become overloaded when stressful phenomenon accumulate too quickly. So too much, you get too much. And what happens to a baby when it gets overstimulated is it falls asleep. So if I was to use that symbolism here, and then I think about how often they're telling everybody to wake up, or the opposite of, because whatever they say, it's the opposite of, go to sleep, stay asleep, which is particularly the case in urban areas. It accumulates too quickly, and so people go to sleep. Scientific research, regulations, monitoring programs, and technical, they check out or they just go crazy. All of those can be used there to discuss what happens. That's what ADD medicine is. It's a stimulant that overstimulates the brain and causes the brain to sit at a peaceful state. So stimulants for overactive children are prescribed stimulants. And that causes, what do they call that? A cancellation of sorts. And so you have a moment of clarity. So that's why babies sleep. And that's basically what happens in those medications. Scientific research, regulations, monitoring programs, and technical innovations are all attempts by human species to quickly and collectively cope with urban environmental constraints and to mitigate population losses. In other words, so as the same people are telling me the same people in this club telling me that we have overpopulated from global warming, they're also telling me that they're trying to mitigate the loss of people, of the population. That sounds you got a very swollen tongue right there. That's a forked tongue is what that is. Slap you both. In other words, the ability of humans to rearrange and manage their surroundings by creating rules and coming up with new ideas is akin to how an animal or a microscopic species reorganizes themselves to cope with a modified environment, whether beneficial or challenging. Even though these adaptations in human group behavior are guided by intellectual processes, there is still a type of control within living systems facilitated by communication systems that include the endocrine system. They're a type of control. Did you hear that, Your Honor? They're a type of control within the living system that I can take advantage of. The effects of anthropization on nature are abundant. I'm not sure what that is. Let me go look this word up. Oh, look, search. They got it on the page. It's going to take me to another page, so I'll just tell you what it says. Anthropization. Oh, it just gave me research papers of it. Okay. It's just giving me more research papers that use that word. Okay. Okay, let me try to see if I can do it this way. Yes, I can. Okay, let me do it that way. I thought it was going to give me something different than that. In geography and ecology, anthropization is the conversion of open spaces, landscapes, and natural environments. Okay, so it's basically, it sounds like urbanization. It's the conversion of open spaces, landscapes, and natural environments. Okay, so our perversion of the planet on nature are abundant. That goes into the green movement, yeah. Rachel Carson described the effects of the spray insecticide of DDT on wildlife as a, quote, silent spring. In this insecticide, whose estrogenetic properties were discovered much later, had other consequences long-term time after, and notably on the male alligators in the lake Apicoa since 1991, and the widespread conference and the wing spread confront. Oh, okay. I want to go look this up. I might have to go check this out. This right here. Site. This I want to know, what was it doing to the male alligators? That sounds very interesting. Since 1991, the wing spread and the wing spread conference, numerous other studies have been describing correlations between effects and exposure or the mechanisms of action of endocrine disrupting chemicals in the living world. That also just made me think of, if, I read something a while back that was saying, it was basically alluding to a pattern that happens through evolution, through human species, or through living species, is that they'll have times in their life where the species will live to a very old age, and then times in our lives where we'll live a very short age. And if I was forced to live in a very short amount of time, I would need to breed quicker, wouldn't I? So now I thought of, with the precocious puberty, is that nature's way? Now, I'm not saying that they haven't possibly created it, but even in that creation, meaning of life, it might be part of the process. And we might be doing it to ourselves. Maybe that is some of what the bigger, pattern macro of macros is about. I mean, a 13-year-old is going to be a 13-year-old regardless of how smart they are. So that's an interesting thing for me to think about. I might have to tab that for a moment. Pin it. I'm going to Pinterest it. I find it interesting enough to pin. Initially, macroscopic effects and impacts on the reproduction of wild animals were observed, including reduced fitness, malformation of male external genitalia, exactly what we were reading about what was happening to the boys, getting that tumor and causing growth malformations on the whatever gland that was, whatever that was, the thyroid goiter. The effects of EDCs on human health arise. So now, are there going to be papers asking if this chemical of DDT could possibly be why today we're seeing the next generation? It's evolution in the process, if you will. The effects of EDCs on humans' health arise from exposure. I doubt we'll see any pictures asking that question. And nobody's going to go, hey, let's go check out DDT. You can't do that. Why? Because they are a business. They're in the club, remember? They're in the fraternity. The effects of EDCs on human health arise from exposure to mixtures and chemicals during vulnerable periods or windows of susceptibility, like pregnancy and adolescence, with a major one being embryo-fetal development. See, there it is, pregnancy, embryo-fetal development. Now remember, embryo-fetal development, half of that embryo happens a generation before. So grandma is that egg's genetic makeup. So then you take grandma's genetic makeup and you add current mommy's environmental exposure, shake that up, and you have a martini, a dirty one. Furthermore, the impact of re-exposure throughout life also contributes to these effects, although it's still poorly assessed. So I could give you something today or not. You have it already hanging out inside you, like EBV, the Epstein-Barr virus, just hanging out inside you. And I can just give you something or expose you to something and trigger it into action. I can mix the martini inside you. They're mixing drinks inside us, proving the effects of it. Now, which one is going to survive adaptation? What's the new species? What's the new drink going to be? Proving the effects of exposure to EDCs remains a significant challenge due to the factors such as the cocktail effect. I was just saying that. See, they use those terms too, as well as repeated and complex timing of exposure. And I want to talk about this complex timing because, again, this is where when they have a train derailment or they disintegrate a couple buildings or they, have some type of explosion at a fireworks, port. Or some type of, factory blows up. They have a timing. They take a complex timing issue and they make it a very concise timing issue. So all of the humans that were in this radius, I can now follow them for the rest of their lives. And I can see how the ones that were really close to the train did and how the ones that were kind of outside did. I'm getting petri dishes everywhere. And so I think that when we see some of these things, even if they're by accident, so say you don't even want to go there. I don't know that I want to go there either. Okay. So even on an accident, we'll give them the benefit of the doubt. Either way, it gives them, they know every chemical that was in that factory, in that fertilizer factory, or in that food manufacturer. We saw these things catching on fire. They know everything that's in this and in that. And when that goes, they have a radius that they can measure. And so they can take advantage of maybe it's a happy stance in science. Yes, it finally blew. I got to get out of there. I got to get over there and start taking some measurements. I've been waiting for this moment all day. And if you listen to me and you've ever known somebody that's worked in like an ICU or one of those ICU units where they have codes that happen. I had a friend that was an ICU nurse, and she said that there is something. We were talking about why the doctors and nurses hang out there. And she said, because when you get that code, there's something that kicks inside you. It's why people become, EMTs and things and firemen. There's something that lights up inside you. You live for the code. You don't want there to be a code. You don't want there to be a fire alarm, but something about that moment energizes them. In a way, there's types of people that's how they work. And they also, they have jobs doing these things. They're in everyone. We have them on the YouTube. People who jump on a story the minute it's there, they jump on it. I want to be the first. Those people they get excited by the story. These effects could be linked to significant and localized exposure to EDC. So that's the sentence there that says what I just said. Examples of EDC impacts on human and wildlife are given in Table 1. Subsequent basic research identified non-monotonic and potentially severe effects when exposing organisms to chemicals at low doses below the safety limits, but at the origin of an adverse effect, not originally captured by toxicological assays. So they thought that they were below the safety, but they're now finding out maybe not so much. They do have some adverse effects, which are ambiguously present in the environment. Is that right? Ubiquitously. That's it. Observations of human populations have highlighted the possible and multi-generational, what did I just say, effects associated with exposure to these disruptors. So now go back and ask, what were our grandmothers? The generation that's being hit right now are the Zers, our kids, the Gen X kids. These are the ones having babies. These are the ones coming of age. These are the ones having their puberty right now. These are the ones that are there in that place. So when it says multi-generational effects associated with the exposure of endocrine disruptors, keep that in mind. And then think about what were their grandmothers exposed to and their great-grandmothers exposed to. More recently, the effects of endocrine disruptors on internal organs, such as the ovaries, right? Again, the adipose tissue or in the brain have been extensively documented. And let's note, too, that mothers have been using birth control for a very long time as well. So birth control, that's going into the mother, and that is having an effect on the baby with the eggs she will be producing in the future. The most consensual definition of EDCs is that the World Health Organization described EDC as, quote, an exogenous substance or mixture that alters the function of the endocrine system and consistently causes adverse health effects in an intact organism or its progeny or its subpopulations. If that's seriously not the sickest sentence that you have heard. And whose mouth does it come out of? The scientific community, including the Endocrine Society, issues various statements in the early 2000s to 2001 and 12 to elucidate the main principles of action specific to EDCs. These statements aim to clarify EDCs do not follow the mode of action of classic toxic agents such as lead, cyanide, arsenic, and carbon monoxide, whose toxicity is dose dependent. And you can get some of these things from past generations as well. Instead, EDCs operate through unique mechanisms of action, even though multiple physiological barriers exist. Their discovery emerged from the integration of observations of abnormalities in wildlife and abnormalities in human populations, which were subsequently validated through laboratory experiments. The awareness of anthropogenic pressure on the quality of life in urban areas is well exemplified by the study of air pollution effects. In Europe, approximately 80% of population lives in regions where the levels of a particular matter, or the PM, surpass the air quality standards set by the WHO since 1913. And since the 1970s, this pollution concentrated near its source, such as traffic roads, factories, or urban heating systems, has been associated with a decline in life expectancy and an increase in pathologies specific to populations living in urban areas. That's by Krampus and Costanza. Air pollution is caused by a complex mixture of compounds with diverse properties and sizes that vary depending on the meteorological conditions and human activities. Its detrimental effects extend beyond the respiratory system and impact the cardiovascular and neurological systems. After newborn weight and contribute to certain cancers and a decline in a life expectancy. Knowledge about the complex effects of atmospheric pollution is an interesting example if we want to model the impacts of the effects of variables EDC mixtures found in the urban environment. Regarding air pollution in urban areas, we can distinguish between acute effects during pollution peaks and chronic effects with delayed disease onset. In 2019, the WHO estimated that 4.2 million premature deaths are attributed to ambient or outdoor air pollution, leading to a decreased life expectancy in urban areas compared to rural regions. So there's where your depopulation is coming from. See, you think they're just going to come around and kill you quickly. Of course not. First, they want to drain your bank accounts. They want to drain your children's future inheritance. They want you to sell anything of value so they can own that too. Remember, in the future, you own nothing. And we'll take care of you while we use you for experiments. You will die eventually. None of you are going to get to live forever. Okay? The idea that you even thought that is silly. And of course, some of you will let you live longer, and we'll let you try our fancy schmancy medicines and give you money. Of course. Of course we will, because we always have to have some actors showing us what they're going to be able to do to you or your children. So you'll continue to sign up for the programs thinking that you're saving the future of mankind. You are not. You're saving their future of mankind. Regarding the pollution caused by endocrine disruptors, questions of acute and chronic exposure and how these chemicals can be transported worldwide arise. Trains work as a way to transport them. Let's remember, they've not yet thought about not having chemicals on the same train that when they have an accident could mix and create a really nasty chemical reaction. Nobody in the train industry or in chemistry has come out and said, when we have a train, we cannot have product X on the same train as product Y. Why? Because if there's a train derailment and both of these things leak into the environment, a really nasty thing happens. And the devil goes, say what? Let's see. The characteristic of EDCs are that they could have different consequences depending on when exposure occurs. At low doses, without activating a detoxification process, and as single compounds or mixtures, multiple consequences of exposure are difficult to capture as the modes of action are numerous. The following is a non-exhaustive list. 1, at the synthesis and transcription levels of the genes, if the hormone is encoded by a gene. Notice the word we're using, encoded by a gene. So for example, TRH, and it gives you some, the fish, the tish, the girth, or enzymes that allow their synthesis in the thyroid hormone or steroid synthesis. 2, the disruption via interaction with a blood disruptor proteins that carry the hormones. 3, at the membrane transporter level. 4, interaction with the nuclear receptors that are transcription factors resulting in gene expression. These are all the different places. Remember, this is a non-exhaustive list, so there is an exhaustive list. This is just one that won't exhaust you, of places that they think this mode of action happens. So this, what was it? Endocrine disruptor can happen in a lot of these different locations. The interaction with the nuclear receptor, said that. Hormonal clearance with phase 2 enzyme interaction. So they're looking at all of these. They are studying this right now in people. They're saying, okay, here I can find it here. So now we're going to do more research. I need funding for my research. And you don't hear about that research until they publish the findings. That could be a long time, depending on how long the research is going to last. That could be 30 years. You might not find out about these full studies until 30 years. They typically might, start showing their findings right away. But if it's a long-term study, again, their identification is more complex and requires a highly specific scientific approach that ideally combines an epidemiological approach, basic vivo and in vitro research. So all of your eggs that you were donating to science, people getting paid like plasma to donate eggs, even to research experiments, all the millions of abandoned eggs or research experiments, and the collaboration among complementary research teams. So the chemical substances are highly mobile in the air, water, and food chain. The ubiquity of chemical substances is exemplified by the presence of Plathades in the cuticles of ants found in remote areas of Amazon. Furthermore, a recent mapping of the perfluorinated substances demonstrated their higher concentration in industrial basins, although they have been detected in other areas away from contamination sites. Interestingly, persistent organic pollutants have also been detected in top Arctic predators. And then these compounds, or PFAS, have been discovered in the Inuit population. So they're finding them even in all kinds of different locations. And I thought about this too in this industrial basins. I mean, you think about evolution and, future species through migration, having to move, and how we just do. We become nomadic and have to move to other areas. Adaptation. And so animals of all kinds that come across these pools of water, that can also influence their, I know that they put up things today, fences and things today, supposedly to keep things away. But in the future, or in a, apocalyptic sci-fi movie, those fences won't be there. They'll be gone. They'll be fall over. They'll be tore over. So it'll be an open cesspool for all kinds of animals to bikini bottom lick them, and a few generations later, they sprout a feather on their head. To effectively monitor and analyze the effects of chemical substances on health and biodiversity, a crucial prerequisite would be the systematic mapping of exposures to different areas. Okay. Along with the establishment of national register that references pathologies or species. However, such essential data are often not widely accessible and are frequently collected with delays. And many studies have examined the relationship between chemical exposure and pathologies within specific geographic regions and limited time frames, such as lung cancer disparity. Increasingly, these studies do not consistently reveal significant differences between rural and urban areas, potentially due to the geographical mobility of populations. Exposure areas can vary during conception, pregnancy, childhood, and the period preceding the onset of diseases associated with endocrine disruption. Why do we have precocious puberty? Humans are some of the most powerful drivers of evolution, and the urban environment is characterized by habitat fragmentation, artificial light, and noise. Urbanization is an important global driver to biodiversity changes, negatively impacting some species groups whilst providing opportunities for others. Biodiversity losses, either in absolute numbers or also with the loss of diversity of types of species, are correlated with these activities. The particular affects amphibians, reptiles, or insects, whose diversity have been decreasing in urban areas, highlighting the negative impact of urbanization on these animal groups. Amphibian declines have been a global concern for several decades, with many species experiencing significant population declines. According to the International Union for the Conservation of Nature, or the IUCN, it is estimated that approximately 40% of amphibian species are currently at risk of extinction. In 1991, they highlighted the need for long-term studies to differentiate natural fluctuations from humans and urbanization impacts. A study conducted in urban areas in Australia documented that urbanization negatively influenced amphibian abundance and species richness, leading to a reduction in overall amphibian diversity. In this context, EDCs are some of the main threats to the amphibians. In other words, they're the main threat. Now, here's the thing that I have, again, forked tongue. You're talking about these organizations. So let's talk about what these things are. The International Union for the Conservation of Nature is not helping anyone. They are a statistic. They're what we call making awareness. They're a ribbon. They're an awareness group. That's what WHO is. That's what United Nations. They're all, I want to make you aware. All the greenie movements you need to be aware. And they throw out, it estimated. So you donate to these things. And what you're actually, SPCA, anything that you donate money to, any kind, Feed the Children, Doctors Without Borders, these kinds of things, anything that you're donating money to, the majority of your money is going into firms to give you percentages to make you aware. And so you're donating to basically no one is getting helped, because from this group comes a smaller group that they'll also take your donations and they'll go send bags of rice to the poor children of Ethiopia. Okay, that's different. It is estimated that approximately 40% of amphibian species, and they know this because they're even blaming it on the EDCs. So this company and global warming and greenie movement has been knowing about this the whole time, and they're telling me that I need to stop what are they giving? What advice are they giving to humans? Stop using straws. That's one of my problems. They know exactly who is doing it, and they're not stopping them. And they mention it here in one of their papers, but global warming and all. We know what's causing global warming. Everyone does. It's business. Business as usual. The sky's on fire. Business as usual. Clock in, Bob. Shut up. Go to work. Don't notice the fire on the hill. So they've done nothing. They're not doing anything to stop it. So what purpose do they serve? Besides Dawn dishwashing soap, it saves the ducklings. Speaking of birds and Dawn soap, bird populations worldwide have shown varying trends, with some species experiencing declines whilst others are stable or increasing even. They're adapting well. Approximately 40%, they're going to be a lot of, I guess, predator birds that are going to be adapting well. I'm thinking, I don't know how that works. How does that work? Typically one thing goes out and, so the mice, we get a plague, basically. Approximately 40% of the bird species have declined in populations. Almost half of all of the birds are gone from the system. That's a lot of birds gone from the system. This biodome ecosystem has lost 40%, half, probably more than that. That's just what they know of. Since they've been 40% since they've been monitoring. Similarly, reptiles, including lizards and snakes, have also experienced population declines. You get rid of snakes, you have a lot more rats running around in the urban landscapes. So get another cat. If you lose your snakes, you have more rats. So you need to fill your house with cats, your urban landscapes with cats. In their review, the French et al. Highlighted the need of assessing the diversity of multiple taxa, studying specific urban features, and considering the directionality of responses based on physiological and behavioral impacts or urban areas. Furthermore, the decline of insects, essential components of biodiversity, is a growing concern in urban areas. It should be borne in mind that as for vertebrates, biodiversity loss refers both to a loss of diversity, meaning selection or resilient species, and to a loss of individuals as a specific taxa. The balance between species can dramatically change and therefore needs to be monitored. Urbanization has been linked to the loss of insect populations due to habitat fragmentation, pollution, and changes in the land use. It's estimated a 75% decline in insect populations worldwide. Wow. Well, that could explain a lot of why the birds are dying off. If 75%, so 3/4 of our insect population has disappeared, well, then that would explain why birds, and I'm probably going to guess fish, lizards, and amphibians are probably dying off. Isn't that their main source of food? Jesus. Emphasizing the need to address the role of urbanization in insect declines, plus all of the pest control. I mean, right there, again, the EDC. So they know very well, what's causing all this bullshit. However, especially bees, so the Hymenoptera, or especially bees, they show higher species richness and flower visitation rates in cities. So the bees are taking over. Isn't that interesting? Isn't that interesting? These authors suggest that apparently managed cities can enhance the conservation of Hymenoptera, or the bees, and thereby act as hotspots for pollination services that bees provide to wildflower and crop grown in urban settings. Oh my God, I'm remembering that movie, Attack of the Killer Bees. Could you imagine having to live in a smart city that's also a Hymenoptera sanctuary, and you got to walk to work in your smart suit swiftly or slowly as to not disrupt it'll be like a video game. Can you get to work and collect yours without upsetting the bees? Are you going to be you're going to be walking around in bee suits right past the 5G or 10G towers that are sucking your energy from your bee suit. Holy crap balls, that'd be a great movie, and I could base my whole movie off of science. And then somebody on a truther channel will go, have you seen this movie? Can you believe, look at this. This person is predicting the future. It's the Matrix. No, it's Bee City. Isn't that the X-Files? So, however, to determine the toxic effects of EDCs, we need to study individual as well as population trajectories and modes of action. Since hormones are conserved across vertebrae and play a crucial role in the development and reproduction, it is imperative to consider all factors disrupting normal endocrine functions. For several years, endocrinology and plasticity of living beings in constrained environments have been investigated under the term, quote, urban endocrinology. However, these studies focused on hormonal measurements, particularly glucocorticoids or the stress hormones, with an emphasis on avian species. The avians are here to save you. The avian that's one of the alien species, by the way. So maybe we should be, the birds, dummy. It's not a species from another planet. The birds as a species are telling you, hello, McFly. That's who you should be channeling, not Harkazar or whoever you're interested in this week. As a canary in a coal mine, used by miners to detect carbon monoxide toxicity before harming miners themselves. Endocrine disruption can be assessed by early specific signs in both companion pets and wild animal adapted to urban environment. However, these two categories of animals are not comparable in terms of their exposure to air, water, or soil contamination. In the movie The Great Invasion by journalist Stephanie Horrell, an entomologist said, quote, we are the subjects of a worldwide experiment on the endocrine disruptors without being aware. That's what we're saying. That's just, can't get any clearer than that. The same could be said for our pets without being aware of it. We are exposing our domesticated animals to mixtures of pollutants created by humans via food, water, air, soil, thus exploring the physiology of our domesticated animals and the signs of endocrine disruption is an extraordinary avenue to explore. Many. Domesticated animals formerly served specific functions such as hunting or herding. Now they are domesticated for human companionship, living in houses or flats. Their welfare, health, as well as moods and anxiety need to be considered. The emergence of new professions such as animals, physiotherapists, and kiniotherapists alongside veterinarians indirectly signifies this humanization of pets. Do our pets genuinely require such high levels of care, or are we only projecting our needs on them through anthropomorphism? Besides studying biotic diversity, some authors suggested to study the endocrine pathologies of our companion animals, and their exposome is closer to a human than that of a wild animal. Processed food and sedentary lifestyles. Interestingly enough, they have a set of lab animals in everyone's house, not just in the laboratory. You who fought to save animals from lab tests are actually having your animals live in a lab. Isn't that interesting what they just said there? How ironic, I believe the word would be. Several studies, or maybe hypocritical. Several studies have investigated the presence and potential impacts of environmental contaminants on pets, shedding light on the exposure or partitioning of various substances with endocrine disruptive potential. Yang examined the partitioning of an exposure to organ phosphate esters, or the OPEs, and I'm not even going to bother, the PAHs, the PAHs. So the OPs and the PAHs in indoor dust, air, and pet hair in China. They analyzed polythene, some other thing, and microplastics in pet foods and feces in the United States. And they investigated the urinary concentrations and distribution profiles of these plethylate metabolites. See, once I get caught on one, then it's hard, right? In pet cats and dogs. And additionally, they studied the occurrence of some other things I can't say here if you want to look now. Some things, some biocides in Italian house dust, emphasizing the potential relevance for children and pets. Furthermore, they explored the role of pet cats and dogs as sentinel species for humans, along with their exposure to flame retardants and the different patterns of bioaccumulation and chlorinated pollutants for domestic dogs and cats. Sousa conducted a baseline study on mercury in pet hair, providing insights into the exposure of pets to this priority environmental pollutant. Another group assessed some polycorpholous levels in cats from residential flats in Italy, highlighting the role of the indoor environment. Furthermore, I mean, think about how much stuff dogs and cats eat. They, a puppy will eat a few pairs of shoes at least, get into anything and everything. Dogs dig in the trash. They'll chew on the plastic bag to get to the cookies inside. So you do have kind of an interesting thought there. It would be high, I would think. Scratching the carpet, licking themselves, which they're licking all of the dust particles and things that are in the house anyway. Environmental, you live in a city and your animals are walking. So yeah, you would have different, that's very interesting. They found a high azole contamination in the common blackbirds and vineyards, emphasizing the impacts of these chemicals on animals in multiple habitats. With the exposure of pets to EDC similar to that of humans, there also might be a correlation between EDC exposure and issues as infertility, diabetes, and obesity, the hyperthyroidism, and hypoadrenocorticism. The main endocrines examined in endocrine disruption assessments are oestrogens, antiestrogens, thyroids, and non-sex steroid axis. The EU Parliament in 2019, for those that are paying attention there, they highlighted the need to study thyroid function, brain function, obesity, metabolism, and insulin. Boy, they sure did. In another 2 years, they got a whole bunch of people at the doctor. Whilst infertility is affecting 17.5% of humans worldwide, reproductive issues are not well documented for domesticated animals. Some reports highlight reproductive disorders in pet rodents, demonstrating that preconceptual and gestational exposure of sheep to an environmental chemical mixture altered the maternal metabolome in a fetal sex-specific manner. However, the reproductive impact of the urban exposome on cats and dogs, if any, is hard to address because of the lack of data, which is difficult to obtain because of common irreversible sterilization. So we spay and neuter our pets. However, reproduction in pets may be of a concern. When examining other endocrine diseases, a closer examination reveals that animals tend to develop conditions such as obesity, diabetes, and pancreatitis when living in human environments. For example, among cats, even those with freedom to roam, there is a noticeable and increasing prevalence of obesity. Canine, feline, and human obesity could be seen in a One Health perspective. Thus, as in humans, chemical pollution can be one of those determinants of obesity in pets. Endocrine axis are interacting together, showed that obesity and hyperthyroidism are positively correlated. Which you're going to, I mean, this is just really interesting because as I am going to read more things to you about precocious puberty and future streams, that they have no explanation. They say they have no idea why that could be happening. There's no causation yet. I think this is a causation with an increase in obesity. Okay, so anyway, I've been almost reading this for an hour. We'll skip that now. I think you get the idea. So let's talk about artificial light in mammals. Light reaching the retina is crucial for vision, but also importance for non-visual input to the brain. Intrinsically photosensitive retinal ganglion cells, so there's your ganglion, project the light to the, and doesn't that make you, now don't you think, isn't it interesting when you think about that, and then you think about the lion used in the beginning of, what was it, one of the movie companies, I can't remember the name of it, but they have that rawr lion, and it's the photosensitive retinal ganglion cells project the light to the suprachiasmatic nuclei, which releases various neurotransmitters and thus mediate the 24H light-dark cycle. Influencing the secretion of, for example, serotonin, dopamine, and melatonin. And natural light and its variations during the circadian cycle are difficult to reproduce by electric systems. Lack of daylight exposure in the developing child, a major consequence of increased screen time indoors, is correlated with multiple health risks, ranging from physiological problems such as sleep and obesity to psychological ones such as depression and anxiety. Cognition problems, impacts on eye development, increased myopia, and deficiencies in endogenous vitamin D production. A lot of this we already know about. I mean, it's kind of a duh, like, okay, of course. But the thing is that they know about it. And they keep writing papers and telling me on the news that they don't know what's causing it. The effects of artificial light at night are known, and they're still doing it. So the fact that they even know that it's causing these problems and then continue to encourage more of it, where you're putting on glasses and walking down the street so you get more of it, it's just insanity. It's insanity. Okay. So this altered seasonal reproductions in humans, the effects of artificial light at night are known in animals. You get some glycemic dysregulation, decreased spontaneous energy expenditure, altered seasonal reproductive cycles. So you're not having babies during the winter times. Again, our bodies will not have babies during a time that it seems like not a good idea. And humans increased global circulating glycocorticoids of inflammation, altered daily plasma leptin rhythms and glucose homeostasis, altered ovarian steroid secretions, ovulation and embryo implantation. Oh my God, that just made me think. You know, we were just learning. It was Anton who was sharing an article about what they've just discovered about moths to a flame. So moths to a light, to an artificial light. And he says that they've just discovered, if you don't know who Anton is. I'm sure I've changed him. If I think about it, I'll try to grab it and share it in the community, but you'll just have to trust me or go look it up yourself. But he was reading an article. He was saying that, to the best of my ability to share this, that moths acclimate their surroundings. So they use light, the moon, the light of the moon, to regulate their location or orientation. And so what's actually happening when a moth comes up to a light is it's using it and it's trying to flip itself over or re-regulate its orientation, stabilize its orientation. And in a close light like that, it's unable to do that. And so it's continually flipping back and forth between orientation, giving it this patterned flying around or zigzagged, spiraling type behavior. And so basically, the moth is being tortured to exhaustion. So let that sink in for a minute. And we're doing that to the womb. You know, that women are supposed to be lined up to the moon cycle. You know, full moons give us lots more baby births and things like that, and 28-day period cycle and things. And the moon, or the soft light, is everywhere now. It's very interesting to think about here. So just want to throw that out there. You know, this artificial light, is this causing our bodies to become disoriented to the point of exhaustion? So it just dies. The ovary shrivels up and dies. I don't know. I don't know what that means, but it's very interesting. But the underlying mechanisms have yet to be studied. There's a probable link between the effects of continuous artificial light, melatonin depletion, and interactions with the hypothalamic pituitary axis. A recent review reported that central control via the hypothalamus, disrupted by artificial light at night, is one of the causes of impaired migration. So we've heard of that as well in the green movement. And here's another one that the WHO says is bad for you: electromagnetic waves. The World Health Organization is currently conducting a project to assess the potential health effects of exposure to radio frequency electromagnetic fields with frequencies between 100 kHz and 300 GHz in the general and working population. Since the 1950s, RF or EMFs have been used in medicine for magnetic resonance imaging, radio frequency ablation, the industry for heating and welding, domestic appliances like baby monitors and Wi-Fi, security and navigation, radar and RFID, and especially telecommunications, such as radio, television broadcasting, mobile telepathy, cell phones. 6 major topics were identified: brain cancer, leukemia, adverse reproduction effects. And again, there is an article that is this some of what's happening to our precocious puberty? For those the WHO commissioned systematic reviews of experimental observations to analyze and synthesize the available data. A study published in 2020 included 21,049 Swedish and 3,120 Finnish adult participants enrolled between 2008 and 2011 in a cohort study of mobile phone, and followed for 4 years, showed a slight increase in insomnia among mobile phone users in the highest call time category, at that time mainly in 2G and 3G. Since then, usage times and wave networks have changed significantly, but few data are available. So they're not rechecking that. Increasing background levels of non-ionizing anthropogenic electromagnetic fields, or EMFs, from 0 hertz to 300 gigahertz could cause damage to non-human species at the ecosystem and biosphere levels. Irrespective to the taxa, however, field studies are still scarce. We don't want to study that. In other study exposures of gravid rats and pups in the postnatal phase, 24 hours a day to 900 megahertz electromagnetic radiation, or RF EMR, average wave frequencies of electronic devices present in the home. So that's the average frequency of the devices in the home. It led to an increase in hepatic markers of oxidative stress and changes in the melatonin and cortisol secretion, but with conflicting results. Patients with, this is the kind of stuff that makes me think of why they're so desperate to have every device in your home be a Wi-Fi connect. I can't even order a lamp anymore without it having some kind of, electronic thing. You can't just plug it in and have the basic, everything you're buying, toaster ovens, refrigerators, washers and dryers. There is no old technology. Everything has some kind of Wi-Fi connection to it. Patients with this electrohypersensitivity and or multiple chemical sensitivity, MCS, appear to have similar clinical pictures with biological markers of low-grade inflammation, oxidative stress, and autoimmune response involving autoantibodies against O-melanin associated with hydrodynamic effects on the brain imaging in the capsule thalamic area of the temporal lobes, suggesting the involvement of the limbic system and the thalamus. The appearance of 5G networks and the installation of relay antennas in densely populated areas and the constant decrease in exposure to EM waves in young children is a public health issue. See, they told you that. The WHO told us this. Look at that. And yet this is still considered a conspiracy. I mean, that's the silliness here. So then we have some noise pollution. I think we get the idea. And climate change. Take a drink. Sedentary lifestyle, your body fat, industrial diet, fast food consumption. I mean, it just keeps going. The lack of nature and the endocrine effects. The lack of nature has a direct and indirect effect on our mental health, in particular stress and anxiety. And instead of getting everybody out in nature, they want to put you in smart cities that have more sedentary lifestyles because you're a virtual person, more noise pollution because you have to wear your earbuds, more light pollution, more electromagnetic waves, more artificial light. Isn't that odd? Isn't that odd? That's what they're suggesting when they have all of this evidence that proves the opposite. I put the link to this. I'm not going to keep reading. I think we get the idea. Water is another one. Our soil, indoor and outdoor air, population monitoring, non-chemical disturbances, such as insulation and ventilation of buildings, limited density of dwellings, creating white areas protected from electromagnetic waves, reducing sources of sound and light pollution, reintroducing vegetation in cities instead of concrete, encouraging outdoor physical activity and favoring alternative means of travel, such as cycling or using the train, are challenges for future urbanization that can safeguard the hormonal and metabolic balance of the inhabitants of cities. Due to a lack of training of the authorities concerned, these approaches are slow and rarely put into place. The decontamination of soil, air, and our water. And then there you got your conclusions. It says the pressure exerted by the different environmental parameters concentrated in urban areas constitutes an important adaptive challenge for living beings. This challenge sometimes results in a positive adaptation, although it is rather negative for most of the species. Among these environmental factors are chemical substances and physical factors acting together. Endocrine disrupting chemicals, or EDCs, can disrupt reproductive processes, alter behaviors, and impair the growth and development of everything. So here are some of their sources of funding. So the National Museum of Natural History gave them, they received money from there. National Centers of Scientific Research also donated some money. Our JBF and BD Hospital, St. Vincent's de Paul Hospital also gave some money. We also acknowledge financial support from the ANR project, PolySafe, the European projects Athena and Endpoints, and the European Partnership for the Assessment of Risk from Chemicals, or PARC, has received funding from the European Union's Horizon Europe Research and Innovation Program under grants. And there you go. They have no known competing financial interests. There's more references here, as you always kind of like to look at if you want further reading. Here's the blackbirds from the vineyards. Advancements and challenges, contraception in dogs, and one health solution to obesity in people and their pets. Multiple pesticides in mother's hair samples and children's measurements at birth. Those are from a French National Birth Cohort, or ELFI. Anyway, so there's that article. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Share it if you find it interesting. Read it off yourself, even better. Don't comment like I do. I can't help myself. I can't help myself but think as I read. So I kind of raw read these and think as I go along. And they seem to kind of, in a sentence or two, validate the thought I just had. So if I've thought of it, they've thought of it. And if they've thought of it and I've thought of it, then it definitely has to be a thing. You know, and that's some scary stuff what they're doing there.